Hello and welcome back, everyone, to the Rebellious Noise Pro Wrestling channel. My name is Scott, and we are here to kick off the weekend of Royal Rumble. We've got loads to go through, including last-minute predictions and kind of guesses about surprise entrances and things like that. And, of course, a pretty interesting card to break down as well. We're going to be doing all that right after this.
Welcome to the Rebellious Noise Pro Wrestling channel. On this channel, we bring you some great content from inside and outside of the squared circle. We will go through and offer some in-depth analysis of the biggest events of the year, as well as bringing you exclusive interviews with some of the industry's biggest names. There will also be live show reviews, in-depth features, and podcasts. So make sure you give that subscribe button a slam so you don't miss any of the action.
So yeah, we are here to kick off Royal Rumble weekend. Really enjoy doing these kickoff streams on the weekends. Of course, we've got the kickoff watch along to do as well. But right now, we're basically just getting ourselves in the mood for what this weekend has in store for us, and it looks to be a pretty big one. We've got loads of surprises to kind of run through and kind of talk about how likely they are at this moment in time. But again, a big card to talk about. I say big in the sense that it's a kind of they're all big matches, right? But it's not big in the sense of how many matches there are. There are only 4 matches on this card. And yes, 2 of them are Rumble matches and they're huge. And another one is a 2 out of 3 falls match. So I guess technically that's going to go to the third fall, right? You could say that's 6 matches. There you go, quick maths. But not only that, we do have a fourth, if we're just counting it that way, to talk about as well. So big show to break down throughout the weekend. Again, we are going to be with you with multiple streams. So if you are watching live, thank you for watching on demand. Thank you very much as well. Or if you're watching this part on the replay of the build-up show, thank you for joining us either way. It's again going to be a really interesting show to break down. Let's get into some of the surprises in a little bit, but first of all, we're just going to kind of run through the card overall. So we'll talk about, of course, the men's rumble, the women's rumble, the 2 out of 3 falls match as well, and yeah, just kind of talk about what we think is going to happen on the show itself. So let me just get our graphics up here. Let's break into some of these. Of course, on top of that, you got a WWE Championship match where it's kind of champion versus champion, but not really, because Kevin Owens is walking around with a title that he doesn't actually own. He just stole, and really it's just a secondary representation of the one that we see there, of course, on Cody's shoulder anyway. So we've got a world title, or WWE title, I should say, match to break down, as well as the 2 out of 3 falls, and like I say, 2 Royal Rumble matches. But let's go through them one by one. This one here, the 2 out of 3 falls match, really interesting that they've managed to put this on the card, and again, surely in place of a 5th match as well. So I'd imagine this is going to get a decent amount of time on the show. You would imagine a stipulation time match like this. I mean, really, they're all kind of big gimmicky matches, right? You've got 2 Rumble matches, a ladder match, and the 2 out of 3 falls. The only thing different here is that the 2 out of 3 falls doesn't have stipulations within it. Otherwise, this would really be a heavily kind of gimmicky themed night if it isn't already. Yeah, like I say, ladder match, really looking forward to seeing what happens there. And of course, as always, the women's Royal Rumble and the men's Royal Rumble, some of the most exciting matches in the WWE calendar. Now, myself, Rob, and Dan have given our original predictions for this show as well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to play those, and then I'm going to refer back to those in just a moment and react and see if my opinion might have changed as we've now moved a few days away from those original predictions. So let's have a look at our predictions from earlier. 2025 predictions, let's do it. Starting off first with the 2 out of 3 falls tag team title match between DIY and the Motor City Machine Guns. Now, I've been really impressed with what those 2 teams have been doing lately, and I feel like this is going to be quite a big match. A bit of a shock though, right? They've barely featured the tag titles on anything other than the weekly shows, so to see it on the PLE is one thing. To make it surely going to 3 falls is quite another. We're basically getting 3 matches in one there, right? After not being on a PLE for ages. Well, I think this time we will see the Motor City Machine Guns coming out on top. The feud's been great so far. It's all been about making DIY look like naughty heels and make the Machine Guns look like the deserving baby faces who've come in recently to WWE. And I think what better way to solidify them as a top tier tag team in the WWE than giving them a huge win on such a big PLE. So I think Motor City Machine Guns are going to be your new tag team champions.
Motor City Machine Guns versus DIY. Now look, I've liked the build up of this feud. I think DIY stealing it from MCMG was a perfect way to kind of keep this feud bubbling and building. It's going to go 1 apiece, so I feel like Motor City Machine Guns will probably get the first pin, and then DIY will get the second, and it will come down to the third fall, I think, which is going to be a guarantee. My overall prediction though, I think Motor City Machine Guns walk out as new champions. However, this is the end of DIY. I think DIY, we lose them. DIY destructs at Royal Rumble.
The tag team championship match between the Motor City Machine Guns and DIY, and into a 3 falls match. Champions going into this are DIY. DIY coming out of this World Championship, still got good talents. I reckon there will be some interference, probably in like the second thing, in the form of someone like Pretty Deadly or Street Profit or something like that.
And up next is the Charlotte Flair show, the Women's Royal Rumble. Bit of a spoiler there, I guess. I've come out and said it already. Charlotte Flair surely is winning the Women's Rumble. I can't really see an obvious pick beyond Charlotte Flair. They have been airing vignettes for her return, specifically at the Rumble. We know she's in the Rumble. It's not going to be a surprise, so I think she's probably just going to win it. Now, my reason for this is because I think it looks like they probably are going to be setting up her versus Tiffany Stratton at WrestleMania. Feels like a big time WrestleMania match, doesn't it? Now, personally, I'm looking forward to having her back. I think she's a great performer. While there have been claims over the years of her being pushed too much, her talent does kind of justify it, right? But it's a very frequent thing. So her coming back and winning the Rumble, I think will get a bit of fan backlash if that is the case, which is a bit of a shame. But at the same time, I don't know what else they would do.
For the Women's Royal Rumble match, it could be Becky. She could return. There's rumours going around that AJ Lee could return. I love the rumour mill. It's one of my favourite things for Royal Rumble because you don't know who's going to win, who's going to be there. For me, there's going to be one person, I think one person being victorious, and I think it's Charlotte Flair.
Then we go to the Women's Royal Rumble. I think this one's cut and dry that it's going to be a Charlotte Flair win, you know. As much as I don't want it to, I do think Charlotte Flair is coming out of this as the winner and will go on to WrestleMania to face Tiffany Stratton and put an end to Tiffy time potentially.
Now, WWE title is on the line in a ladder match. Old school, right? IC belt and IC belt. No, this time it's going to be the Winged Eagle and current WWE Championship, as Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens, who also lays claim to the title, will be looking to climb the ladder and surely have that iconic image of grabbing both. Well, who will it be that grabs both titles? None other than Cody Rhodes, surely, right? It doesn't feel like this is the time they're going to take the title off of him. And Kevin Owens seems to quite often get in these positions, right? Where he's that kind of wrestler that gets you to that next point, or that wrestler that's being used at the Royal Rumble in this position already. We've seen that before as well. So, yeah. While I've enjoyed the feud, it just feels obvious. Now, if Kevin did win, it'd be a massive shock, be a bit of a swerve, and hey, I'd kind of be up for it. I don't really see it happening.
Kevin Owens versus Cody Rhodes for the WWE Championship. Man, with the way this has been building, I feel like the perfect person to win this would be Kevin Owens. It would make sense in that way, because Kevin has he's had a bit of run through what's been going on. Not that he's a champion. I've not really enjoyed Cody's, like, his run at all. Same as Gunther's. It's been a bit hit and miss. So I'm kind of edging more towards Kevin Owens. That being said, what your heart thinks and what your mind thinks are two different things. My heart wants Owens because I'd love to see him have a run with that title, especially him walking around with the Winged Eagle one. But I just don't see it happening. I think It's going to be a gnarly match, but Cody Rhodes is walking out still champion.
Next up is the WWE Championship ladder match between Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens. Now, interesting note actually on the Raw this week was that there was all mention of people going after Cody for the title. No mention of potentially Kevin Owens. So that makes me think it's going to be a Cody Rhodes victory.
Now the men's Royal Rumble. Now don't worry, we will get into surprise entrances and returns and things like that on our build-up show. But here, I'm just going to let you know who I think is going to win the Royal Rumble. And I think that will be CM Punk. Now there are other strong candidates. I know John Cena with his final year. You could probably make a point for Sami Zayn, Seth Rollins getting back in that title picture, Roman Reigns of course forcing himself back into a main event as well, potentially going after Cody or Kevin Owens, or maybe it is Kevin Owens that wins the title and it throws a spanner in the works here as well. But I think CM Punk is the one at the moment that feels like the safest bet about who he could go to WrestleMania and face. So I'm going to go with CM Punk winning the Royal Rumble.
And the men's Royal Rumble match. There's too many names. We've had this discussion on the live shows. If you've watched them, if you've had the chance to tune in, then you'll know that there's so many names kind of floating around at the top who it could literally be anyone. The names are being thrown around: Roman Reigns, Drew McIntyre, CM Punk, John Cena again is another one, Seth Rollins. There's too many names to throw in, like to just randomly throw out them and think, okay, this is who's going to be and where the story is going to go. After watching Monday Night Raw, I think we may be going Cody versus Punk, and if that's the case, that means Punk would have to win the Royal Rumble. Now, Punk hasn't done that yet. He's been a Money in the Bank holder. Obviously, he had a long run with the WWE Championship. There's not much more he has left to really prove, and obviously he wants to be a WrestleMania main event. So I'm going CM Punk. But I would love it to be someone so random and obscure that it'll really throw everything, you know, as a curveball, and we'll see what happens. But I'm going CM Punk.
And finally, the men's Royal Rumble. Now I think this field is a little bit bigger. I think we've got John Cena, Seth Rollins, CM Punk. All three men that could win this. But I think in his final year, I'm going to have to go with John Cena.
All right, so those were our predictions from earlier on this week, and I got to be honest, for the most part, I don't think I would change any of mine. Of course, predicting Royal Rumbles is always challenging anyway. Even though I feel pretty confident, it could go anywhere. I mean, literally on the night, throughout the show, and throughout the Rumble matches themselves, your predictions can go all over the place. But as things currently stand, I feel the same way about my original predictions, especially on those Rumble matches. Great, of course, to see Rob's predictions there and Dan's as well. Let me know if you agree, by the way, like comments that we've made there that you disagree with, or that you do actually kind of agree and think is going to happen at the Royal Rumble this weekend. We've got a comment in the chat as well. Lil Fettuccini, apologies if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Profits will interfere. Of course, Rob said that in his prediction for DIY / Motor City Machine Guns match. And it does kind of feel like that is a possibility. Of course, they've been in and out of this feud in various ways. Of course, so pretty deadly, I believe, lately as well. So it'd be interesting to see if all 2/3 falls go without interference. Goddess Nikki Cross says Damian Sandow returns to Royal Rumble. Damian Sandow is a great show, actually. I'd love to see the intellectual savior of the masses return. Of course, a great possibility of a cameo, maybe with Cody Rhodes, with former Team Rhodes Scholars, or even maybe with The Miz from his time as Miz Dow, the stunt double. But yeah, I was always a big fan of Damian Sandow's work, so that'd be cool to see someday. We're getting to that stage where people from that era, right, are being discussed as returns. It can't be too close, which we'll touch on a little bit, as far as how long, away from WWE they've been. It can't be too short, but also started to get to the era, I think, of, the late 2000s and early 2010s, where there are people from that era who are likely to come back for a one and done sort of thing. And again, we'll get to some examples of those very soon on the stream. But thanks for your comments, guys. Please keep them coming in. And again, throughout the weekend, we're going to get us and you guys hyped up, hopefully, for the Royal Rumble. But it's not that hard. Our jobs are easier when it comes to a PLE like this, because you've got such incredible matches to break down and kind of get excited about. Something that was said in the men's Royal Rumble, for my part at least, was that I just think CM Punk, even though you've got these different options, is going to win. Now, Dan went for a different winner. He went for John Cena, but that's the beauty of this Rumble. I genuinely think, as sure as I feel about CM Punk, I wouldn't be that surprised if it was John Cena. If The Rock came back, I guess it could be The Rock. There's Seth Rollins, there's Sami Zayn, there's Drew McIntyre, there's Roman Reigns, as I mentioned again in my original prediction, who certainly would have a claim to jump at that top spot once again. Goddess Nick Cross says again, Wade Barrett will wear the Nexus t-shirt in the Royal Rumble. Oh, Wade Barrett is a great call. And again, really goes back to the era, doesn't it, that we were talking about. I'm surprised they didn't lean into that Drew and the kind of rumor of a feud with Drew already. But I'd love to see him come back. And maybe that's what Drew does. Maybe that's what happens going into WrestleMania, because I feel like Drew deserves something big. But the card is so kind of full at the top at the moment that I don't think he's going to get in any of those spots. So to give him something, I guess, worthwhile or make him feel, I guess, happy, is to do maybe something with Barrett, and maybe it's Barrett's official retirement or something like that if he loses, or whatever it may be. If Barrett's in condition to get back, then man, I'd love to see it, and that would be a great little feud. One that I feel like they've lent away from for a bit, so maybe it wouldn't be so obvious, but there's definitely, of course, history there, whether you go to the feud with Punk recently or go back to their history, and that's what they alluded to within that feud anyway, as far as them being friends, but having a little bit of tension, right? Let's get into it though, right? Let's get into some of these potential returns. And I'm loving these suggestions in the comments, by the way, guys. Keep them coming as well. But let's get into potential returns. Now, Stephanie McMahon went on the Pat McAfee show, and she said that there will be surprises and that she doesn't know all of them. Now, take that as you will. I hope that means we can safely say we'll get a few, because last year, if I'm honest, what did we really get? It wasn't much last year, was it? And a lot of these names that I'm going to go through in a moment were kind of batted around last year to varying degrees as well. And it was a little disappointed, I have to be honest, that we came away from that Rumble not getting too many surprises, as far as returns or debuts or anything like that. But there is a lot of potential this year, as there is with every year, and I'm hoping this year's going to be different. As I say, Stephanie McMahon's gone on record now apparently saying, look, there are a few planned, I don't even know them, which kind of would let the fans down quite a bit if it ended up being like last year, right? So you got to feel that if she's coming out saying something like that, then it must be for good reason. Let's start with some of the potential returns and surprises, or debuts even, in the men's Royal Rumble. And I've got a little list here, and I'm going to run through them and kind of just talk about my thoughts about how likely I think they are, and I guess where we could go if a return did happen for these wrestlers. Goddess Nick Cross says, imagine if Damian Sandow returns as Grayson Waller. That'd be pretty cool, wouldn't it? Yeah, he kind of would fit into that little kind of section of the show, right? That section of the roster. I think Theory and Waller would be a great way to kind of use him, actually. That's actually a good shout, mate. Now let's get to some of the names that are flying around at the moment. The first one I'm going to get to is one I don't see being too likely, but at the same time wouldn't be massively surprising considering the landscape of the wrestling world at the moment, and that is Dolph Ziggler, aka Nick Nemeth. Now, of course, he just lost the world title to Joe Hendry, say his name, and I'm sure he'll appear in just a moment with another potential surprise entrant. But for now, let's talk about the person he beat again. Dolph Ziggler. This is a great example of someone that hasn't been away from WWE for that long, and even if he did come back, what name do they pick? Mustafa Ali, of course, has just re-signed for TNA as well. Not that I'm expecting him to show up. I think if either of them did, it'd be more likely Ziggler out of the two. But it kind of muddies the water a little bit, right? Now we'll get to naming on another person later on who I think might actually have a good chance of coming back and what they might use as far as their name goes. But sticking to Dolph at the moment, I don't see it being super likely. Would I like to see it? Yeah, I was a big fan of Dolph Ziggler. But at the same time, I do feel like he maybe needs to step back from WWE for a little bit longer for it to be impactful. pun not intended there. Of course, his time in TNA has been pretty cool. Good for TNA, good for him and his career, I feel. But crossing over, this is the awkward thing with the TNA partnership now, right? Crossing over with ex-WWE stars is a potential kind of messy point, right? Now, the next one I'm going to get to is a combo, right? And that is Matt and Jeff Hardy. Now, Matt and Jeff Hardy, again, now in TNA, been in and around the tag team division, of course, there for a while. Seeing them come back to WWE feels like something that we are likely to see, but within the TNA ecosystem, they seem to suggest that you never know, but is that just wrestlers doing wrestler stuff, right? I don't know. Again, the TNA thing feels like it's an opportunity to bring people in, but feels like it's more of an opportunity to bring in new stars. And maybe if you were going to use people like Matt and Jeff Hardy, it'd be in something like NXT in the future or something like that. I don't know. But look, seeing them come out of the Rumble, either one of them would be cool. The two of them, really cool. Don't get me wrong. Do I think it's going to happen? Maybe. You know what? More likely than Dolph Ziggler is what I'll say. Now, the next one is, I guess, you know, a wrestler somewhat similar to Ziggler as far as eras go, and very tight and as far as it seems friendship and their time on the WWE roster is Matt Cardona, or Zack Ryder. Call him what you will. We've actually done a video on this very channel discussing at length, actually, what a Zack Ryder / Matt Cardona return to WWE might actually look like. So if you haven't seen that already, please go and check that out on this very channel. We basically broke down whether or not he would stick to the Matt Cardona character, whether or not he'd go into full Zack Ryder mode, or does he become Zack Cardona? So if you haven't already, check that video out on this very channel for a little preview into you know, what we think about that. That's pretty much what I do think. I do think it would be a mix. If he came back at the Royal Rumble, which I would really like to see. I was always a big fan of Zack Ryder. I've enjoyed what he's done since leaving WWE as well. Whether or not it meant a full-time slot on the roster for him, I don't know, but I would like to see that happen because I think he's deserved, I guess, another opportunity, reinventing himself. And this is why we're having these conversations about what does he look like when he comes back. With Dolph, it was more like, what name does he use? But Cardona is using a completely different character in some ways. I mean, even on his indie run, he's kind of twisted and turned a little bit as far as his presentation. So, look, I'd really like to see it. Him with Chelsea Green would be really fun as well. Speaking of which, I know Cardona has been playing around with the fans, if you will, on social media. So let me just see if I can bring this up for you now. Of course, he did a few interviews recently. I think one with Chris Van Vliet, where he's basically saying, look, of course I want to go back to WWE and I want it to be right. He's in recent months, of course, well, I say a little bit longer than that, actually. He dressed, well, he didn't dress up as his wife, but he wore a championship out on the Indies. And then he started tweeting the other day about the Royal Rumble favorite moments. He was talking about his, you know, what people's favorite eliminations. He come up with Rikishi eliminating Too Cool in the year 2000, which is actually one of my favorite eliminations in the Royal Rumble, one of my favorite Royal Rumble moments overall. But then he also shared this on social media. Let me just get up for you. Here we go. There it is. And look at the, I would say tweet, but you know, it says then, now, forever together, of course, in reference to WWE's signature at the start of the show. Tags his wife, Chelsea Green, and the photograph, as you can see, is of the two of them there. Definitely not real. On the left was taken quite some time ago, but of course they're both as US champion, which is a nice little nod. So maybe it's just about that. Maybe it's a kind of little hint that he is coming back, or maybe Zack Ryder, aka Matt Cardona, is doing, as we said with the Hardy Boys, wrestler things, right? Of just kind of working the fans and getting his name out there, because as long as there's interest around him, even if he's not coming back, that'll be a spike in his merch sales and bookings, you would imagine, right? Another comment here from Goddess Nikki Cross says, Matt Hardy brings his broken gimmick in the Rumble and eliminates Dominic Mysterio. Yeah, it would be cool to see broken Matt Hardy back, even with them, right? Yeah, with the Hardy Boys, if they came back into it, how do they do it? It would be cool to see. But yeah, going back to Matt Cardona, Apparently he's in town for a convention anyway. There are strong rumors come from people outside of WWE around him, it seems, maybe possibly in Circle. I don't know. Apparently out there at the moment anyway, saying that, you know, it could happen. But whether or not it does, I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I was more convinced last year and the year before, and also around Raw after WrestleMania, that he would be a return. Things have quietened down for him, I feel, in the past year. But I would still love to see it. And I do think it's still a possibility. And it would be nice, right? It would be nice to have those two back together. And this time on the WWE main roster as well. Now, we said his name earlier on. We said he'd probably appear on the stream. Here he is. Not actually, but in the form of another prediction, of course. And that is Joe Hendry. Now, I think this one is actually really likely. Joe Hendry is someone who has made waves in the wrestling world over the past couple of years, really. We have the privilege of interviewing Joe Hendry quite a while back now, actually, when he was working for World of Sport Wrestling on the main Rebellious Noise channel. If you're unfamiliar with us here at Rebellious Noise, this is the Rebellious Noise Pro Wrestling channel. We have a series of channels essentially on different kind of topics. You're with us today talking wrestling, but sometimes we talk football or food. So we've also got the main Rebellious Noise channel. We have an interview of him from about nearly 6 years ago now, I believe. Maybe even 6 years ago, and talking about his journey back then. And even then, he had a great story, let alone now. Again, just like hype around Cardona, I feel has fizzled a little bit. Hype has certainly fizzled a little bit lately around Joe Hendry, but I think that might actually be not on purpose, but kind of, maybe on purpose, because he was like hot stuff, right? Just before he even got featured on NXT, which is why they did it. But TNA didn't quite pull the trigger with him. They didn't give him the title when everybody expected him to get the title. And now they've done it. It's kind of like when they brought in, didn't they bring in Mickie James as Knockouts champion? I think they did. And even Jordan Grace, who we might touch on later on as well, as a champion in TNA. So bringing him in with a title kind of helps TNA even more, basically, because, again, a lot of this partnership has seemed a way for WWE to go, oh, we like you, let's bring you over here. Again, which we'll touch on in just a moment. Goddess Nikki Crust, thanks for your comments, buddy. Says, Chris Jericho returns at Royal Rumble with Attitude Era gimmick. You're getting real specific with these ones, buddy. Look, I've always been a big fan of Chris Jericho. It's not going to happen. I think it will happen one day, if I'm honest. I think he will be back in WWE once again. And talk about a guy with many different gimmicks he could return as. He'd probably return as something completely different if his history is anything to go by. But guys, keep your comments coming. I want to know who you think is going to show up at this year's Royal Rumble. Who's going to be the surprise entrant? And what do you think of the Royal Rumble card overall? Yes, it's a small one, but it's a big one at the same time, if you kind of get my meaning there. Now, let's go back to some of these predictions, guys. Moving on from Joe Hendry, as I say, I think is a very likely one, and I'd like to see it. The next one, talk about like to see. I would love to see the return of Big E. Now, of course, there's potential here because of the storyline going around his former friends and former colleagues, I guess you will, in the New Day, Xavier Woods and Kofi Kingston. But at the same time, we didn't see him. It wasn't too long ago that we actually saw him on WWE TV, right? So it wouldn't be as much of a shock. But if they were somehow in the ring and he came out to kind of bring justice to things, and yeah, maybe, but it doesn't feel like it needs to happen at the Royal Rumble. Whereas Big E returning before this storyline felt like, oh, that would be so cool to see it at the Royal Rumble, right? I just don't know, even if he's well enough to do that, even if his career is going to go in that direction, I don't know if storyline wise now is the right time, because they've basically made him lose and just look bad anyway. So yeah, I'm just not sure if that's the case. Would like to see it. Hey, if I'm going out of 10 on this as how much I'd like to see it, then 10 out of 10, because it would mean so much. Talking about someone we interviewed over the past, in the past, it was actually on this very channel, but we got to chat to Big E when he was WWE champion, which was such a privilege. He was such a nice guy to us and gave us a fantastic interview, as you can imagine. So charismatic, really, really funny. And just had a great conversation with the guy. So if you haven't seen that already, please check that out on this very channel. And for kind of fandom reasons and also personal reasons, because of how nice he was to us and how much of a good bloke he seems, I'd love to see a happy ending in some ways, I guess, with a return to WWE fit and healthy for Big E. So we'll see what happens there. I think he's going to factor back into the storyline again. I just don't know how. I don't know when. And yeah, don't know what capacity. But look, I'd love to see it back. I'm going to give this a 50-50. We'll see. Now, next up is another one that I'd really, really like to see, but no one really seems to know if it's at all a possibility, which I think makes it more intriguing because it could be a huge surprise, and that is Aleister Black, aka Malachi Black, if you've been watching AEW. Now, a return to WWE is, I think, set, in my opinion. I think that's something that they would want, he would want, and it's probably going to happen. I hope he comes back with his old theme song, as in, you know, the one he used in NXT, that incredible song. I know they've been giving a lot of people new themes lately, but sometimes when they bring people back, they give them their old theme song, like Naomi, like Carlito, and then they give them a new one again. Hope that wouldn't happen if he came back, because I think the old one's the best one. But let's just get to whether or not it would happen. I don't think it's that likely, because all kind of rumors online suggest it's February, March, potentially, when he's out of contract with AEW. And apparently he's still less listed on their active roster page on their website. So that kind of drops it by quite a bit, I feel, because they'd want to kind of, if he shows up tonight and he's still on their page, that's not a good look, right? But tonight, it's not tonight, it's tomorrow. But if you're watching this replayed on the build-up show on Saturday, hey, it is tonight, just to confuse us with timelines. But look, yeah, this is one I'd love to see. If it happens at the Rumble, I'd be thrilled. And if he came out to his old song, I'd be over the moon. And the presentation would feel so cool. It just shows, right, what new environment can do, right? A lot of these guys, when they left WWE, I was so excited to see what they do in AEW, and they had this kind of aura around them. And now those same people, I'm like, wow, what's it going to be like when they get back to the WWE? It just shows you again the difference of environment. Charlie Haas returns as Austin Theory. Hey, look, you've got two great examples there of wrestlers who have dressed up as wrestlers in the past, right? Going after a tag team. I love it. It's not going to happen though, right? Surely not. Let's get back to some hopefully more realistic returns. And this is another great example of someone coming back off of the injury list. A lot of rumors lately that suggest that this person may be cleared to return this weekend, and that is AJ Styles. There was talk a while ago that he was on his way out, essentially heading into retirement from WWE at least, and they kind of did his retirement tour storyline apparently. Now, you've got that going on for the whole year now with John Cena. This is kind of awkward. Maybe it would have been wrapped up by now of AJ Styles if he hadn't got injured. If you look back to that footage of him being, you know, becoming injured, you can see how frustrated he was. A real shame. Now, I'd like to see him back. I don't know where to go with him. Like, let's be honest, the past 4 or 5 years, not much has happened. Like the Boneyard match, which was incredible, was the last like big thing he did. And hey, it's one of the biggest things you can do in wrestling, so it's hard to top that. Don't get me wrong, you know, having the honor to retire the Undertaker at a very strange WrestleMania. But still, what an honor it would have been. Now, I'm hoping he comes back. It won't be the most kind of, oh my gosh, it's AJ, you know, because that was when he first came out at the Royal Rumble. But it'd be a nice little nod to that if he kind of ends his WWE career with a return at the Royal Rumble. Not saying he will retire at the Rumble, but I'm saying, you know, this portion of his career kicks off essentially with a return at the Royal Rumble. So yeah, I actually think it is pretty likely if all things surrounding his health are to be believed. Wade Barrett will bring back the Nexus. Look, I was a big fan of the Nexus, I'll be honest. There were also rumors a few years ago, weren't there, that the Nexus were going to come back and do something around WrestleMania, and then I can't remember what it was now, but it apparently got, you know, cancelled. So that's a real shame. I think it was around the anniversary of the Nexus. Nexus was completely wasted. That night they debuted was one of my favorite nights in wrestling history. And that night they lost at SummerSlam. Probably one of my least favorite, you know, and the many times that they succumbed to John Cena. also up there with some of my least favorite times. But let's move on from the men's Royal Rumble and possible surprises, and of course talk about the women's Royal Rumble and possible surprises going into there. So once again, we're talking debuts, we're talking returns, any form of surprise really. Again, keep your comments coming, guys. I'd love to know what you think as far as the card for Royal Rumble again, and who you think might show up on this momentous occasion. But let's break down some of the most common rumors flying around the women's Royal Rumble at the moment. Now, one will be someone we've seen actually appear in the women's Rumble as a surprise already, Jordynne Grace. Now, Jordynne Grace has just finished with TNA. You'd imagine it's because she's about to sign properly now with WWE, even though they're working together. Interesting to see how that goes forward. But it looks like she is essentially going to be joining WWE anyway. So what better way to re-debut, I guess, than tonight as a WWE member of the roster, which they could really hype up on commentary. So I actually think it is very likely, if we're going out of 10, maybe a 7 or 8 out of 10. The only hesitation there is that she's done the Rumble thing already, and maybe they would want to bring her in elsewhere, maybe just straight on NXT or Raw, SmackDown. I don't know where she'd fit into the fold. I guess we could find out this weekend, though. So Jordynne Grace, I think, is pretty likely, even though she's been putting out on social media plane tickets or, images of at least plain information that she's set to be on because she's visiting her mom or something for her birthday. I don't buy it. We know how these wrestlers work. Next up is a return. Again, I'd like to see most of these, if I'm honest, and that is Nikki Bella. I liked that she was featured on the Raw Netflix debut and around those kind of celebrations. It was really cool to see her back, and it would be nice to see her go back to WWE. I know there was a bit of a sour kind of departure, it seemed, for her and Brie, but it would be cool if we got a return from Nikki Bella at the Royal Rumble. I think Nikki Bella is someone, and Brie, but I think more so Nikki, that improved incredibly in an era where the women's division was kind of leaving them behind. They were featured quite heavily at a time where they didn't need to do, I don't want to downplay it, they didn't need to do as much. It was still a time when the WWE weren't using women in a way that they should have, or that they would end up using them, I guess. And that started to change. The women's evolution started to happen while these two were still in the company and still being used heavily. And Nikki Bella, I remember, was the champion. I think going into Evolution, she was the champ. And yeah, I think really elevated her game, and I think deserves a lot of respect. Both of them do. I think what they did in WWE, they are legends now. I know this is strange. If you would have shown someone this 10 years ago, I think maybe more than 10 years ago, let's say 15 years ago. Oh, I'm getting old. They would have laughed at it essentially. And I think that just goes to show how great their careers actually were. So yeah, a return from Nikki Bella, I think, would be well deserved and quite well enjoyed. Now, the one that's going around the most, and isn't that surprising, I guess, is because she's due a return, surely, is Becky Lynch. Loads of rumors last year around her contract status. Of course, her husband is working with WWE. She seems to be in good kind of, I guess, relationship with WWE. So you'd imagine she will be coming back to WWE. This isn't 2, 3, 4 years ago where you'd expect a hot agent to be tempted by going elsewhere. Let's be honest, things aren't quite where they were a few years ago because WWE have turned things around and AEW haven't kept up, I'll be honest. As much as, I'm happy about competition, all this kind of stuff. Let's be real. Becky Lynch is more likely to come back to WWE. Will it happen at the Royal Rumble? I think, again, it is likely. It's going into WrestleMania season. We don't know if she signed a new contract or anything like that, or the reasons why she hadn't signed it last year. But I would imagine she'd be returning to WWE, and I think this is actually one that's probably the most likely return. I'm going to give this a 9 or a 10 out of 10 even for likelihood to return to the Women's Royal Rumble for Becky Lynch. Now, moving on to, I think, the one that is the most exciting in the women's division as far as this rumor is going all over the place. And again, one that's been brewing for a few years now. That, of course, is the return of AJ Lee. Now, CM Punk, you may have seen, was asked backstage in a quick video where they were like, what surprises would you like to see in a Women's Rumble? What would you like to see happen? And he said something along the lines of, I can't say because I get in trouble. Now, of course, everybody's going to take that as he's talking about his wife, AJ Lee. And now, in the past, he's talked about the possibility of her coming back, and he's really bigged up her skills and the fact that she kind of is doing all right and in her career without WWE, but if she wanted to, he'd be happy, and he's not going to push her, sort of thing. Surely those conversations have happened, right? That's just the way things work with couples and jobs and things like that. I think it is likely we will see her someday. Will we see her this weekend? I really, really hope so. And I really hoped last year as well. But I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. I think it is actually quite likely, probably the most likely it's ever been. Last year, I think it would have been more. No, maybe it was more expected last year because Punk had just come back. But then you could argue maybe it's more expected this year because he's been back for a while and she's still not done it. So, look, either way, I think it is likely. I think at a Rumble would be great. Talk about someone, again, from that era who kind of helped usher in that women's revolution, I should say. Evolution was a PLE pay-per-view at the time. Yeah, I think she's a big part of that conversation. And yeah, I'd love to see her come back and light it up. Hey, pun intended on that one, guys. Next up is someone who's on the active roster but may return, is Jade Cargill. Now, a few months ago, I would have been eyeing up this as a massive kind of potential date for Jade Cargill to return. Now, none of us are really sure how severe the injury was. Of course, they played it into storyline and they kind of really overly hyped it and then backtracked a little bit. And as far as, well, they overly hyped it, but then the wrestling media also went along with how the kind of it being severe and then backtracked and then kind of amped it back up, and conflicting reports essentially about it. Now, I've been thinking all along that it's a legit injury, but I don't know how bad it is, and therefore don't know when she's coming back, what the time frame is, and therefore where the story is going to go. And of course, since then, Naomi's taken over her role. Essentially, she's now tag team champ with Bianca Belair, which I think will eventually lead to Bianca versus Jade Cargill. That Naomi was in on the plan, like Naomi attacked her and Cargill and Bianca was in on the plan, essentially. I think 2 surprises is what we should get here. I'm not sure if that's going to be the case. Now, I don't think that works in the Royal Rumble. Now, I've seen suggestions out there that Cargill could come back and be thrown out by Bianca or thrown out by Naomi, and that would lay the seeds as to, wait a minute, are you not happy I'm back, or are we not friends here? And wait a minute, did you do it? Maybe, but I don't think that's the way you do that big shock. I guess the biggest comparison is Austin being run over by Rikishi and the revelation for that not being the greatest. So, I'm just not sure. And also Triple H turning on Shawn Michaels back in the day, 2002, I believe, when he rammed his head into the car and they use super technology to improve the quality, which was ridiculous, like an episode of CSI or something. But anyway, I don't think that tech's available today, let alone in 2002, not to the scale that they claim to have used it anyway, to reveal it's Triple H who turned on Shawn Michaels. But it's a similar kind of story in that sense, I feel, what they could go for. Now, will she return tonight? I don't think so. I'm going to put this at like a 4 because, again, there is still a chance because I don't know how injured she is. I don't know what storyline they're actually going to go with. But if I'm fantasy booking it, then they would have already done something to kind of hint towards it. But I guess it takes away the element of surprise. But I don't know. I don't know if now's the time to do it. Right, let's move in to our next one. And this is someone else, again, currently on the WWE active roster, Asuka. Of course, she returned a few years ago. And a lot of people thought at Royal Rumble, a lot of people thought then she was going to be more like her kind of Japanese, or she's still Japanese, but what she did in Japan as Kana. And we kind of got hints of that. And then she got thrown into Damage Control. And it kind of, I guess it lost control as far as what they seem to have originally been wanting to do for her. She went back to the same Asuka that she'd been, essentially, in many ways, at least. Now, big fan of her work. Now, recently she started posting on social media about some seemingly what seems to be unwanted attention, essentially, from, like, legit, at least, from fans, creeps, essentially. Stay away from confessing your love for people on TV, please, guys. It's not a good look, and it is inappropriate. But she very real life seems to be going through something at the moment. And I'm not saying you can't tweet about real life stuff if you're about to make a return as a character, but usually I would say no. They'd say off social media for a bit, but maybe not in something like this. This is something that needs to be said, whether or not it kind of reminds people who you are and therefore ruins the surprise or not. There's something that needs to be said, and she clearly felt uncomfortable about. So yeah, look, wishing her well if she genuinely is having a difficult time from this. Which I believe she is. And yeah, I'd love to see her back. Big fan of her work. And yeah, we'll see how that goes. Do I think it's going to happen at the Royal Rumble? I'd say, yeah, I'd say it's actually pretty likely. If she's healed up, then I'd say it's maybe a 6 or 7 out of 10. Next up is someone that is, well, I've been in the rumor mill for ages as far as when she might come back. And that is Alexa Bliss. Now, Alexa Bliss apparently was due to come back quite recently. And reports out there suggest that she hasn't really agreed to terms and that there is a little bit of a sticking point here essentially between the two sides. Not sure how true that is. Maybe this is something that's been fed out into the dirt sheets for us all to kind of start fall for it, so that when she does return, it's even bigger of a surprise. I hope that is the case. You know, I hope they are green on terms and they are on each other's good books and stuff like that, because I think Alexa is a great talent, one of the best when it comes to character work, not just on the women's roster, but the entire WWE. A lot of the work she did around The Fiend and stuff like that, as well as, you know, as much as that did kind of fade out and not go the way I think many of us wanted it to, her role in it was amazing. So, like, no fault of hers, essentially. Of course, a big part of rumors around Alexa will always be that she might be attached to something Wyatt related, of course, now with the Wyatt 6. But they've been off TV recently, and I believe I saw just before I came on air, there's rumors that it's apparently because one of them is injured. So I guess maybe they don't want to show them all on, show the group on screen if they can't show them all, which they've not really bothered with the bloodline with, Tungaloa being injured. But hey, it's a different kind of presentation, I guess. So yeah, will Alexa Bliss be coming back? Again, another one where I say, if I'm rating it how much I want it to happen, yeah, man, I really hope it will happen. Will it happen though? I don't know. I kind of believe those reports that she was meant to, and it just fell through because it's been ages. Like, it's not just like a recent thing. Like, oh, she might have come back for the Raw debut. Like, she could have come back at like SummerSlam, right? I mean, I don't know what's got the ins and outs of her personal life and why she might not have come back, but surely she could have come back a long time ago, not just recently at Raw's debut on Netflix. So I really don't know with this one, but yeah, I'd really like to see it happen. Guys, let me know in the comments what you think will happen at the Royal Rumble. Who's coming back? Who's returning? Who's making a debut? Who's crossing the line in reverse, essentially, from TNA? Again, this is a big weekend in the WWE calendar. So thank you so much for joining us as we do kick off Royal Rumble weekend here on the Rebellious Noise Pro Wrestling channel. If you're new here, hey, once again, my name is Scott, and what we do on the PLE weekends is basically try our best to get us all in the mood for that. And a big part of that is on the night on Saturday before the PLE. Do have our build-up shows. Again, if you are watching on demand, or live with us, I should say, that's tomorrow. If you're watching this as part of a replay, hey, you're already potentially watching the build-up. Potentially, that was weird. But the build-up show is how we get everybody hyped up and in the mood for the PLE. Again, it runs a few hours before the Royal Rumble itself. But you are watching currently the Weekend Kickoff show. Something we really enjoy doing on the channel these days, though, is watching along with WWE's main kickoff show. And in this timeline, as I record this right now, it is a few hours away, just over 2 hours away from now. We'll be going live once again to do our watch along of the kickoff show. And we're going to be breaking down every single thing that happens on that show as we get that last bit of hype essentially going into Saturday's big PLE show. So if you haven't already, please subscribe, and I'd love to see you later on that stream as well, because again, we will be watching the kickoff along with you guys. Let us be your watch along, let us be your companion essentially with the kickoff show. Bit of tongue twisting there, wasn't it? And then after the PLE on Saturday night, we'll be hitting you with an instant reaction review as well. Of course, the Royal Rumble is one where there are always big talking points, right? So we'll be coming out of the Royal Rumble with a lot of questions, maybe a few answers, but I'm sure a lot of questions leading into the road to WrestleMania. So again, please subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll be here to break down everything that takes place at the Royal Rumble. But like I say, you've been watching our weekend kickoff show. You would have seen it earlier on in the stream, but we also touched on our original predictions as well. If you missed that part of the show, go back and check it out. It's on our channel already. And we also have a stream on this channel talking about the huge news surrounding the Clash in Paris PLE set to take place in August of this year. Lots to break down there as far as how WWE can use the venue they've got. It's not any old venue, let me tell you. There are a lot of incredible features that they can utilize as well. So if you're looking for something to watch essentially between this stream and the kickoff watch along that we're going to do later on tonight, then I do recommend going and watching our Clash in Paris coverage on this very channel. Also, we've got loads of content on this channel in the form of interviews with WWE superstars, as we mentioned earlier on. We've had a great opportunity to interview the likes of LA Knight, had great conversations in the past with none other than Mammy herself, Rhea Ripley, and also had the honor of having good conversations with the likes of Bianca Belair, Finn Balor, and Damian Priest on a few occasions as well. So once again, if you haven't already, please subscribe and check out more of our content. Before we do wrap up here, though, I'm just going to run through the Royal Rumble card once more. Of course, we've got a men's Royal Rumble to get excited about. We've got a women's Royal Rumble to get excited about. And we've also got a title match that, of course, could change the landscape of WWE. I don't think it will. Told you earlier on, I think Cody Rhodes is going to win, but what a shock it would be if Kevin Owens is the one that pulls down both those titles. Then a 2 out of 3 falls match. Again, my original prediction was that Motor City Machine Guns would take those titles off DIY. It's a bit of a tough one to call, though, because, you know, DIY have only just won those titles, and Motor City Machine Guns would be a 2-time champ already. But I do think this is a great occasion, essentially, as I said in my original prediction, to blow up the Machine Guns essentially on this big stage, because they've been on SmackDown quite a while now. But you know, the Royal Rumble is a place where a lot of fans come to watch that haven't been watching wrestling in whether it be 6 months or 6 years or 16 years, essentially, especially now with all the access on Netflix globally. At least it's going to be a great way for a lot of lapsed fans to tune back in. Talking to tune back in once again, we are going to hit you with the build-up show on Saturday night. So would love it if you join us for that. It's going to feature some of the replays of this and other content we've had throughout this week, but it's also going to have live portions as well, where we're going to have friends from the rest of media joining us as well. So we really would love to see you back for that. But anyway, I've been Scott. Really hope you've enjoyed the stream this evening. But this ain't it. We're going to be coming back later on in just a few hours with our watch along of WWE's Kickoff. Always enjoy when WWE do these. I'll be honest, not usually a lot of storyline progression in them, but what we can pick out of them is always quite fun. The wrestlers with their promos are a little bit more loose than they are on TV, and it's nice to kind of just get hyped and kind of in the mood again for the PLE itself. And I hope we've been able to do that for you here on the Weekend Kickoff show. It's been a great kind of a time for us essentially on the channel in the past few months with these new extra shows, and it seems like many of you have been enjoying them, so I really do appreciate that and appreciate your feedback. And for those that have joined us for the first time tonight, or those that have come back time and time again, we really do appreciate you. If you haven't already though, guys, hit that beautiful red button and subscribe, and join me later on for the Kickoff watch along show where I'll be breaking down all the big stories to come out of tonight's fan event in Indianapolis. But I've been Scott. You've been watching the Rebellious Noise Pro Wrestling channel, and I'll see you on the next one.
Welcome to the Rebellious Noise Pro Wrestling channel. On this channel, we bring you some great content from inside and outside of the squared circle. We will go through and offer some in-depth analysis of the biggest events of the year, as well as bringing you exclusive interviews with some of the industry's biggest names. There will also be live show reviews, in-depth features, and podcasts. So make sure you give that subscribe button a slam so you don't miss any of the action.